I've spent the last 60 hours buried under a mountain of government reports, Excel spreadsheets that go on for miles, and charts that honestly made me question my own sanity. My desk is a graveyard of empty coffee cups, and the air in here smells like late-night desperation. You see, I had this itch, this feeling that the numbers we're being fed about the economy just didn't add up. So I went looking for the truth. Welcome to Financial Mindset. If you find this investigation valuable, please subscribe to the channel. It's the only way I can keep digging for the truth for you. What I found in those spreadsheets was a gut punch I wasn't prepared for. The United States government and a guy going through a textbook midlife crisis are shockingly similar. But Uncle Sam isn't out here buying an overpriced Corvette or hitting the cocktail lounges to forget his age. No, he's blowing trillions on healthcare programs, high-tech tanks, and monthly checks for 70 million retirees, all while the house is on fire. Unlike a normal midlife crisis that you fix with a gym membership and a regrettable tattoo, this one is systemic. This spending problem is how we ended up running a nearly $2 trillion deficit. That means we're spending $2 trillion more than we bring in annually. We're effectively a college freshman with a fresh credit card and zero concept of consequences. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Because we just borrow the difference every single year, the national debt has exploded past $38 trillion. That is a number so astronomical it feels made up, a total mirage. I've looked at every angle, every report, and every possible exit strategy. I wanted to find a happy ending, but the reality is much darker. The only options we have left are ugly, unpopular, and guaranteed to ruin someone's day. I'm not here to read you a textbook. I'm here to rip the Band-Aid off and show you the math no one wants to admit. Stick with me, because once you see what's behind the curtain, you'll never look at a dollar bill the same way again. To truly understand why the house is burning, we have to look at exactly where the gasoline is being poured. Think of government spending as 3 distinct buckets, each one more stubborn than the last. The first, and by far the largest, is mandatory spending. This isn't a suggestion. It's the financial equivalent of your monthly rent or your mortgage. It's locked in by law. We're talking about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Unless someone has a political suicide wish to rewrite the law, this money is gone before the sun even rises on a new fiscal year. It is the heavy, unmovable foundation of our debt, and it doesn't care who is in the White House. Then we have discretionary spending. This is the part of the budget that Congress actually gets to vote on every year, and it's where the real political theater happens. It's education, environment, and, most importantly, national defense. This is the arena where politicians love to scream, point fingers, and perform for the cameras, making you believe that if we just trimmed a little here or there, the whole system would balance itself out. It's the shiny object they want you to focus on so you don't look at the structural collapse happening behind them. And finally, there's net interest. This is the one that really keeps me up at night. It's the bill we owe for all the previous bills we chose not to pay. It's not optional. It's not debated. It's just the interest on the credit card we've been maxing out since 2001. It's money that buys us absolutely nothing. No schools, no tanks, no bridges, just the hollow privilege of staying in debt. Now, here is where I need you to stay with me, because this is where the Diet Coke myth comes into play. You've seen the rants on social media. People shouting that if we just stopped sending billions in foreign aid, our problems would vanish. It sounds logical, right? In 2024, the U.S. spent $78 billion on foreign aid. To you and me, that's a king's ransom. But in the grand scheme of a multi-trillion-dollar budget, it's a rounding error. It's barely 1%. Trying to fix our deficit by cutting foreign aid is like trying to lose weight by switching from a regular Coke to a Diet Coke. But, and here's the kicker, you're still sitting at McDonald's eating 2 Big Macs and a large order of fries. You're ignoring the calories that actually matter. If we cut foreign aid to 0 tomorrow, do you know what that would buy us? 19 days. We would cover exactly 19 days of Social Security payments, and then we'd be right back to borrowing again. The cold, hard truth that I found buried in those spreadsheets is a total gut punch. Just 5 line items make up nearly 70% of everything the federal government spends: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, national defense, and interest. Everything else, every museum, every school lunch, every bridge to nowhere, is just pocket change compared to those 5 giants. We are hemorrhaging cash at the core, and as long as we keep arguing over the Diet Coke at the edges, we are choosing to ignore the fact that the heart of the machine is failing. We're distracted by the noise, while the real math is quietly bankrupting our future. If those 5 giants are the ones bleeding us dry, then national defense is the most heavily armed guard at the vault, and it isn't planning on taking a pay cut anytime soon. We're talking about roughly $850 billion every single year. That is 13% of the entire federal budget. But it's so much more than just a line item on a spreadsheet. It has become the ultimate sacred cow of American politics. When I was digging through the reports on our military outlays, I actually had to double-check the math because it felt like a total typo. The United States spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. Let that sink in for a second. We are outspending China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, and several of our closest European allies all added together. At this point, we're probably after staring at these charts until my eyes hurt. This isn't just about having the biggest stick in the playground. National defense has morphed into a massive trillion-dollar emotional support blanket wrapped tightly around the psyche of the entire country. We live in an era where the 24-hour news cycle and the dark corners of the internet are constantly whispering that a global catastrophe or World War III is just one bad headline away. International affairs have become an absolute dumpster fire, and every time something explodes on the other side of the planet, the national instinct isn't to look at our bank account. It's to reach for that blanket. We've convinced ourselves that if we just buy one more carrier group or one more stealth bomber, the world will finally stop feeling so dangerous. This creates a political trap that is almost impossible to escape. And believe me, I've looked for the exit. No elected official, regardless of what they promise on the campaign trail, wants to be the fall guy who voted to trim the Pentagon's sails. Can you imagine the attack ads? They would be brutal. They would show paratroopers dropping onto suburban rooftops or naval blockades at our ports, while a narrator tells you that your local representative left you defenseless just to save a few bucks. It's a career killer, pure and simple. In Washington, being labeled weak on defense is the equivalent of a political death sentence. So, even though we are clearly overspending, even though we are buying weapon systems for wars that might never happen, while the interest on our debt is about to eclipse our entire military budget, the spending just keeps climbing. It's a paradox that makes me want to scream at my computer screen. We know we're bleeding money, but we're too terrified of what might happen if we stop the flow. We've built a system where safety is measured in trillions of dollars. But the more we spend to feel safe from external threats, the more we ignore the internal rot of our own financial collapse. We are buying the most expensive insurance policy in human history, while the house is being foreclosed on from the inside. It's not that we don't need a military. Of course we do. But we've lost any sense of proportion. We are trapped in a cycle of fear that fuels a budget we can no longer afford. And as long as global tensions are used as a shield against fiscal responsibility, this $850 billion weight will continue to drag us toward the edge. It's a game of chicken where the stakes aren't just political offices, but the very solvency of the nation itself. And as I looked at the rising tensions in the latest reports, I realized that no one in Washington is brave enough to blink first. If national defense is the sacred cow of our fears, then mandatory spending is the Mount Everest of our fiscal reality, a peak so massive and dangerous that just looking at it feels like a death sentence for any politician's career. We're talking about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, the 3 untouchable giants that eat up $3 trillion, or 44% of our entire budget, every single year. But here is the part where the spreadsheets turned into a horror movie for me. We are officially on a countdown to zero. The Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be insolvent by 2034, and Medicare's hospital fund is hitting a wall even sooner, in 2033. This isn't some vague maybe in a distant future. This is a mathematical cliff that's less than a decade away. And when we hit that wall, the law doesn't care about your political feelings. It triggers automatic benefit cuts. We're talking about a 20% slash to Social Security and an 11% cut to Medicare. For the millions of seniors who rely on these checks for 90% of their income, that's not an inconvenience. It's an overnight descent into poverty. It honestly makes me sick to my stomach when I see the glaring common sense fixes that Washington is too terrified to touch because they're worried about their next re-election. Why on earth are we still giving Social Security checks to someone like Warren Buffett? When a billionaire qualifies for the same safety net as a widow living in a studio apartment, the system is fundamentally broken. We could close 73% of the Social Security shortfall tomorrow just by lifting the $170,000 payroll tax cap so that the ultra-wealthy actually pay their fair share on every dollar they earn, not just the first chunk. But instead, we protect the rich while the rest of us wait for the insolvency clock to strike midnight. And don't even get me started on the blatant waste in Medicare Advantage. I found data showing we're overpaying private insurance companies by up to $127 billion every single year. That's over $1 trillion in pure waste over the next decade. We could fix this tomorrow, but it would mean taking on the massive health insurance lobby. And in DC, lobbyist money talks way louder than grandma's nursing home bill. We are standing on the tracks. The train is screaming toward us, and our leaders are still arguing about the seating chart. It's a level of negligence that feels criminal. And as I sat there looking at these insolvency dates, I realized that doing nothing isn't a choice. It's a slow-motion surrender of our future. If we keep surrendering our future to this cycle of negligence, we eventually hit the point where later simply runs out. And that is exactly the dark road we're walking down right now. You see, the world's investors aren't stupid. They can see the $38 trillion neon sign flashing over our heads. When they realize we have no roadmap to fix this spiraling debt, they are going to demand a higher return to compensate for the massive risk they see. And that's when the economic noose truly starts to tighten. A higher interest rate on our national debt means everything in your personal life gets more expensive in a heartbeat. Your mortgage, your car loan, and your credit card rates will all skyrocket, effectively choking the American dream in slow motion. After spending 60 hours looking at these charts, I've realized that we still have a window to fix this mess, but it's shrinking every single day we choose silence over action. There is no magical, painless solution waiting for us. There are only hard trade-offs and bitter sacrifices. We have to decide what we value more, the status quo that's bankrupting us, or the courage to demand real change. I've shown you the math. I've ripped off the Band-Aid, but now I want to hear from you. What trade-offs are you actually willing to make to save the future? Drop your ideas in the comments, and I'll be responding to as many as I can, because the one thing I know for sure is that doing nothing is no longer an option.